Hi everyone. Today I want to go over our assignment, Ancient Myths and Modern Debates, Argumentative Essay. Now this is an incredibly important piece of work because it's worth 35% of your overall grade. And so I want to offer up this video to make sure that you're equipped and well prepared to get started on this assignment. Of course, please do feel free to see me during office hours or send me an email. I'm happy to handle any of the questions you might have about the assignment and how to perform at the best of your ability. So this argumentative essay is 6 to 8 pages double-spaced, 12-point font, and as I'll show you as we go on through, I've identified sort of approximate page lengths for each sections of this paper. Now this paper is going to build on your presentation from the previous module. You're going to craft an argumentative essay that articulates a connection between an ancient myth and a modern debate. This paper is going to stake a unique thesis, one that constructs substantive and well-supported arguments about the debate you enter into, and it's going to work to persuade your reader of your conclusions with clear prose. Now, much of the research for this paper has already been performed as you created your presentation. Feel free to use the evidence you've already conveyed in your presentation to argue for your own unique position on a given modern debate. I've identified to you a number of different necessary components of your essay, and I'm going to go through them one by one. So the first is an introduction, and it's going to be about half a page to 3/4 of a page in length. Now I know introductions are really difficult to write, but the introduction should be a roadmap that tells your reader all the twists and turns of your paper. In essence, it's going to identify in miniature all of the major claims you're going to be making in support of your thesis. So in the introduction, you should succinctly state the following items: your chosen myth and who authored it. Is the connection between the myth and your modern debate relative? You're going to also need to articulate the debate question in clear language, briefly mention what type of evidence you're going to use to develop your argument, and finally take an argumentative claim in a clear thesis statement. Now, one thing you can add to this introduction that might help frame your introduction and your paper is a hook statement. Now, a hook statement is going to get your reader's attention, but it's also going to lay clear the stakes of the larger debate. So in this case, it could be a really interesting and provocative quote from Ovid, if you're doing a myth from Ovid's Metamorphoses. Or it could be a statistic about the political or ethical debates you've been entering into in your presentation paper. After you've written your introduction, you want to give me a little bit of an argumentative summary of your myth. Now, an argumentative summary is different from a regular summary, and an argumentative summary provides the information that is most important and most relevant to the myth, given its relation to the modern debate. This is not a space to provide all the information of a given myth, but to selectively deliver those plot points that are absolutely necessary to establish the connection between the debate and the myth. So the argumentative summary frames your myth in such a way that your reader can later see its relation to the modern debate. I've given you an example here. Say you're writing about Prometheus and Edward Snowden. In this case, you would only need to provide an argumentative summary that details how Prometheus steals fire from Mount Olympus and delivers it to humankind in Zeus's abuse of power. These are absolutely relevant details to your connection between Snowden and Prometheus. You would not, however, need to talk about Prometheus and the trick he plays on Zeus with the 2 sacrifices, or Prometheus's role in the creation of Pandora. So again, the argument is only going to give me those necessary details necessary to establish the connection between the myth and modern debate. This is going to run about 3/4 of a page or less. Now, you're going to move on to the close reading of the myth, and this tends to be the most difficult aspect of everyone's paper. So do feel free to contact me during office hours, or again, send me an email so I can answer any questions. The close reading of the myth is something we've actually been doing all along. We've been looking at the very particular language of Ovid and Aeschylus to identify the deep-rooted ethical or political issues at the core of all the myths we've been reading. So in a close reading, you're going to attend to the larger meanings conveyed by the words on the page. This involves you identifying particular passages from your myths to provide evidence for your particular framing of this myth. That means your quotations from Ovid and Aeschylus are going to provide evidence for the connection you're making between, say, Prometheus and Edward Snowden, or any of the other major connections you're going to be drawing between your myth in your modern debate. So by paying close attention to the nuances of your myth's language, you're going to delineate the world's larger political significance. Thus, provide 2 to 3 different quotations from the myth itself and analyze their political significance. Provide at least one analysis here. It can be a few sentences, no more than 3. Otherwise, it's going to clunk up your paragraph. For example, when we think back to Aeschylus's Prometheus, and we see that Oceanus argues that Prometheus is punished not for stealing the fire, but for his, quote, unruly tongue. Just based on these words, unruly tongue, I can argue that Prometheus is punished because he is a voice of dissent against an oppressive political leader who abuses power. So by teasing out the multiple meanings of unruly tongue, I can make a case for the connection between Edward Snowden and his public league of government surveillance and to Prometheus's bragging about his theft of fire. So in this case, on the notion of the unruly tongue, I can make the claim and secure the connection between Snowden and Prometheus as both whistleblowers. Now the 4th section is going to draw analogies or connections again between the myth and the modern debate. And so you're going to delineate the connection between the myths and the modern debate in very clear language. Now you don't need to draw perfect analogies. What is most important is your ability to explain how political questions arise in the myth and how the same ones arise in our modern debates. So to repeat, you don't need to draw a one-to-one correlation or analogy between a given mythological character and a global given political figure. Rather, what's important is that we can ask the same political questions of the myth that we can of the modern debate. So, for example, Prometheus challenges the reigning political power, revealing Zeus's abuse of power. Edward Snowden, it can be argued, also challenges the reigning political power, revealing the U.S. government's abuse of surveillance power. Both Prometheus and Snowden were severely impoverished for their transgressions. The myth of Prometheus in Snowden's case posed questions about the legitimate use of political power and legitimate forms of dissent. So that's the 4th section of the paper. Now, the 5th section is going to contextualize the debate itself, and this is going to run you about 3/4 of a page to 1 page in length. In this case, you're going to provide an argumentative summary for your modern debate. You're going to provide unbiased information about the political issue that is most immediately relevant to your debate topic. You're going to talk about background information that is relevant to your topic. Who are the political parties involved? How long has this debate been going on? Have there been any major turning points in this debate? And finally, what are the social, political, or economical consequences of this debate? Remember to state your sources for the background information. Then you're going to move on to well-developed arguments that are going to plead your case. So you can provide 2 meal plan paragraphs that are going to support your thesis. It is absolutely essential that you provide both well-supported evidence and that you cite both within the text itself and in your works cited page. Also, provide an in-depth analysis that will show me how evidence is supporting the main point or sub-argument you're making as a way to shore up your thesis statement. Next, you're going to address one counter-argument, and this is going to be about 1 page to 1.5 pages long. In it, you're going to succinctly articulate an imposing argument. So think back to your presentation when you talked about both sides of the debate. In this case, you're going to take one of the arguments, either in favor of or against your given side, and you're going to debunk it. You're going to provide a counter argument from the opposing side and address its limitations, or at the very least, provide a solution to the problem it raises. Now, a lot of students have trouble with this section because sometimes they'll just provide me with the counter argument itself. You must go above and beyond just articulating this counter argument because you need to debunk it. You need to poke holes in the counter argument. Otherwise, you're going to give it the last word, and you'll give the last word to your opposition. Finally, you're going to conclude your paper, and this conclusion is going to restate the major aspects or rhetorical terms of your paper from a more complete or more holistic vantage point. What I would suggest is that the conclusion is supposed to identify the larger stakes of both the myth and the modern debate. It should not open you up to new arguments. The conclusion should just tightly and succinctly synthesize all of the information in your paper. So those are the major components of the paper. I've provided some tips below, and I've also identified the various criteria by which I'm going to be evaluating these papers. So I suggest that you go through and read very carefully the criteria and the tips. Again, please come to office hours or send me an email if you need any further clarification. With that, I wish you well, and I wish you very happy writing.